Yeah, so my first question is, how have you been?
I have been good. A little stressed, but good.
Well, I'm glad to hear that you've been good because everyone says that they've been good whenever they're asked that question. And is that the real answer that you've been good?
Yes, yes, it really is.
What's
I've been
been
having,
I'm
uh-huh.
glad to hear that. What's been stressing you?
The stress part is just, sometimes when it feels like I have a lot to do and I don't have enough time.
Mm.
But I am good at time management. So that's the part that makes me good. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, I'll just get my calendar together and break it down, time block, and I'll be okay. But in my mind, I'm like, I have this to do. But then when I put it in my calendar, it's like, okay, this isn't bad. I have time, you know?
What I'm
So
hearing is that there isn't enough hours in a day for you.
I know. I wish there
So,
was more hours to sleep.
so we've never met before. So tell me a little bit about yourself. I know you used to be a realtor.
Yes. So I was in real estate for 6 years, and ongoing because I am still in it. I'm just not pursuing leads and stuff like that. If I get referrals, I'll do it. I'll take care of it. Um, but yeah, I used to real estate 6 years, but prior to that, I got my bachelor's in psychology,
Uh,
with the plans to become a marriage and family therapist. But because
uh,
of real estate, I put it on the back burner. And now I was about to hit 30 and I was like, you know what? If I don't do this now, and I still felt it in me, you know? So I was like, if I don't do this now, I'll never do it because I hate school. But I decided I was like, I'm gonna do this. And yeah, so now I'm doing that.
so right now you're currently a therapist.
Yeah, so I am a year, and a little more over a year into the degree. And like doctors have residencies, that's basically what I'm doing right now. So I am practicing therapy, for a little bit now.
So do you have your master's in counseling?
I'm gonna have my master's in marriage and family therapy. That's gonna come at the beginning of next year.
So right now you're counseling even with just the bachelor's?
Yeah, so with because of the program that I'm in, they require us to be residents, right? Residents in
Uh,
real-time firms with
uh,
real-time clients. So yes, I am practicing therapy right now because we've already have a year and a half of training, and
I
it's
see.
been a lot. I love my program.
So it's funny because we have extremely similar routes. You're just a little bit ahead
I
because
know.
I'm a realtor and my goal is to
Yeah,
be a therapist, not in marriage and counseling in particular, but
right.
I do want to be a therapist. So it's funny how similar our goals are.
I know.
So and the real estate is debatably more money, but mental health is my passion, and I would figure that that's the reason why you pursued it because it's your
Yeah.
passion. It's not necessarily about the money, right?
Yes, absolutely. Again, if we were doing it for the money, we would stay in real estate.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, of course, I think real estate is one of the number one ways to make as much money as you can, but I was never passionate at it. I would like to say I
Yeah.
was good at it, but I was never passionate about it, and this still kept pulling me, and I was like, you know what? I have to do this. I can't like years pass me by and I'm like, hey, do I still want to do this? I'm like, no, I have to at least try, you know?
That's exactly how I feel. Like real estate, obviously the money is good. It's a really, really difficult job, but I
Mhm.
feel like God gave me a very, very particular gift.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
I feel like I have to use that
Mhm.
particular gift with which I think, I'm pretty psychologically intelligent. And I think that, if there is such thing as destiny, I think it is my destiny to be a therapist. And I think that you can kind of relate to that feeling.
Yes, literally, I say this to people when they ask me because they've known I was in real estate for so long. They were like, like, how is it? Like, are you or weren't you nervous? And when I started practicing therapy, I literally had the feeling, like, I finally had that feeling that I never had before, where it was like, I was born to do this. Like, this is it. Like, it's exactly what I thought it would be, and I love it. I truly do love it.
So, yeah, I mean, what made you want to go specifically into marriage and counseling?
So well, I'm a Christian, and so I do believe in, the devil, demons, all these different things. And I truly think there is an attack on marriage, specifically a spiritual attack on marriage.
Mhm.
And, I feel like a lot of people don't understand what they're fighting up against. And that's why our divorce statistics is so high,
Yep.
So I feel like I want to be a catalyst in the fight for working on marriages, whether it's, get a divorce or work on your marriage, so that's the marriage part. But people do hear marriage and family therapy and they think like it's just relational, which is marriage or family, but I also see individuals. Most of my clients are actually individuals, so
Oh, you don't. So most of them are just by. 'Cause I was imagining like two, a wife and a husband together.
Right. So no, yeah. So the title is marriage and family therapist, but we
Uh,
see individuals as well, and we're able to diagnose from the DSM all these individuals. So, but yeah, I always make that clear. Like we do see individuals, and it's mostly individuals, right? Because the thing with couples is that most of them don't even go to therapy, and if they do, they're on their last leg, and that last leg is usually like, I'm gonna half-ass th therapy and then be like, I'm out. I want a divorce, So I am happy with the couples that do come and they're actually trying.
it's funny because I have a fear. I feel like dealing with a couple, I feel like that would be, 2 to 3 times harder because now you're kind of like playing referee and now they're arguing in your office. And I have a friend who does it and he said it's not that bad, but I feel like, I feel like that would be much harder. And I feel like if I went that route, I
Mhm.
would probably suggest like 75 to 80% of the time to just get a divorce. I feel like,
But that's me. Honestly, that's me. I mean, I myself have gotten divorced. So for me, I'm like, oh, get a divorce. Because the thing for me, my basis on why my go-to is to get a divorce is because I feel like people don't understand that a lot of small things says a lot about big things, right? So when they mention certain things, I'm like, oh, this is not gonna work. You know what I mean? And even if it does work, you're hanging on by a thread, right? Like either that person really doesn't care about you or the marriage is going to be struggling as it already is. But yeah, it does it does take a lot in me to not be like, "Oh, let's get a divorce." Because they are here, they are trying. Um like yeah.
what do you think are like the main reasons why people get divorced?
Hmm, it's a good question. Because in my head, what came up is why they should get divorced, the reasons why they should, but it's never it. Like for me, it's like infidelity, right? But that's really not one of the reasons that people get divorced, which I think is sad. I personally think there's no coming back from that. I feel like that's the ultimate betrayal and people seem to mend. And I say mend because I just don't think there's any mending to that. But I think the top reason is a lack of communication,
Hmm.
a lack of understanding, because communication and understanding goes hand in hand. You could communicate all day, but if the person is not listening and understanding what you're saying, then you're just talking to a wall, you know?
Yeah, and what is your understanding of why people aren't understanding?
Because the thing is, when it comes to marriage, it's two people coming from two different backgrounds, two
Mhm.
different, upbringings, even if it's the same background, right? Say it's the same race or something like that. You're still coming from two different upbringings, and I think people don't understand that that's what it is. When you're coming together, you have to have these conversations about how how I was raised to deal with conflict, how I was raised to deal with love. Some people can't accept love, and the other person's like, oh, my family was super loving, right? I think it's coming together and having conversations and asking each other questions about your upbringing. How do you view relationships? How do you view gender roles? How do you view religion? All these different things. And I think people are not having these conversations. And so when it does come up in marriage, it's like, oh, whoa, I didn't know you felt like that. And then there's a lack of understanding because they're like, no, I wasn't raised like that, so I can't even comprehend what you're saying to me right now, you know?
Yeah, it's really, really difficult when two people are very, very different. Like a little bit different is good, but if
Hmm.
you have like, let's just say like a radical left and a radical right, or like a Christian and a Muslim, like things often tend to go sideways because they're
Hmm.
just so they view the world and God and
Hmm.
people very, very differently. To kind of go back to my question before, why people aren't understanding. I
Hmm.
think ego also plays a very large role. I think that people people's egos and emotions get in the way. And when people are angry, they
Yeah.
tend to be really, really like closed off and closed-minded. And it's
Hmm.
really, really difficult and takes a lot of stoicism and self-control to really listen to someone and to look on their side when the adrenaline is kicking in and when we're angry and when we're angry about anything,
Hmm.
it can get really, really difficult to truly put ourselves in the other person's shoes. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Yes, absolutely. For my own relationships, I always say I always put myself in the other person's shoe, and that I don't know. It seems like a simple concept to me, but a lot of people can't. They see themselves and then they just stop there. But you can't have a relationship like that. You know, that's another person who has thoughts, feelings, different things that they've gone through. So it's like, hey, let me just take a second and like try to understand where you're coming from, you know? And even if you can't understand, say you can't understand. You know what I mean? At least you're listening, you're actively listening.
Yeah, I mean, I noticed a lot of people, often struggle with empathy and often struggle with understanding how the other person is feeling. You're
Yeah.
right about, we need to have more of these conversations. And there are also times when people have the conversations and th there's still a lack of understanding and a lack of empathy. I think one thing I noticed is men and women do not understand each other, especially like when we're younger in our 20s. Like it takes a really, really, really long time because men and women live very, very, very different lives. We have very different experiences, very
Mhm.
different in real struggles. And
Mhm.
men and women have a really, really difficult time understanding each other's thoughts and feelings and struggles, I feel like.
I agree. And that's what I'm saying, you know, just taking it a step further to say, let me put myself in the other person's shoe as much as I can. You
Mhm.
know what I mean? Like, for example, the whole, a woman's safety, right? And with men and men's, I don't want to say lack of safety, but the woman's need for safety, right? Like a man, all you have to do is say, all right, I'm a female walking in the middle of the night. How is she taking this on versus how I would take this on as a man, right? As a man, you wouldn't even have a thought that, hey, this man walking on the other side of the street or whatever, or the man walking right behind me is going to attack me. But a woman, we have those thoughts, right? Because the statistics are there. We're
Mhm.
getting robbed, we're getting assaulted, you know? So it's like, as a man, it's like, okay, well, I get it. I get it. She can't even walk without thinking like, oh, this man behind me is gonna
Mhm.
try to hurt me,
Uh,
you know? And I mean, we can get into the whole like clothing and all these different things, you know what I mean? But it's like men get to do that. And it's like as a woman, you don't, right? We don't get to jog late at night,
right.
versus a man, you do whatever you want at any time of the night, you know? You guys could go shirtless and it's not a problem.
Yeah.
But, it's just like that's just an example, right? But it's just a little bit, like you said, empathy or understanding, and you're just like, okay, I get it.
Yeah.
I feel like when you say like we don't understand each other, I feel like it's because we don't want to, you
Why
know?
don't we want to? Why?
Hmm?
Why don't we want to?
I feel like there is this long war between men and women to
Yeah.
say who's right, And I think if we took a step back and we actually put ourselves in each other's shoes, we would have to admit the other one's right. The other one's, you know what I mean? Like give credit to one of the genders. I think that's what it is. It's like, oh, wow, like I just said, you would if you took a step back and you like thought about a woman jogging at night, you would have to admit you're right. You are right. Your life might be in danger.
Mhm.
with you running late at night. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
So
like you said, it's about ego.
yeah, ego and emotions play a large role. I think a lot
Yeah.
of people like a lot of there's a huge war between men and women nowadays, which we could talk about. And you
Mhm.
know, I see it all the time on social media. And you know,
Yeah.
I noticed that we just have a lot, both sides. And you know, I don't know how if I think you're going to agree with this, but both sides have a very long list of struggles that the other side doesn't have to the same extent. You know,
Mhm.
like so for example. Well, you know, I often come home really, really late at night.
Mhm.
I, when I park my car, it's about like a 4 to 5 minute walk to my door.
Mhm.
Now, I'm not going to say that I fear getting raped, but I
Mhm.
will say that if there is a man or two behind me, I do often fear getting robbed or attacked. You know, like I won't say that rape is on my mind, but
Right.
sometimes I do fear like getting robbed or attacked
Yeah.
if it's late at night, you know. But I would imagine that a woman would be even more scared because now there's the rape factor and a man might be able to defend himself better. So I think we just have a lot of struggles and we have to be very open-minded when, you know, because what the thing is, it's not even that we're not having the conversations, it's
Mhm.
that the egos get in the way when we have them. And
Yes.
that it's so I see the conversations on the podcast, I see the
Mhm.
conversations, but the egos and emotions get in the way when we
Yeah.
have them.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. Because of the ego, they're not able to say, you're right. You
Mhm.
know, I know you're right. I know that there's a struggle that I don't experience. You know what I mean? So yeah, ego is definitely a big part of it, which I don't understand. I don't know why it's such a big deal to say you're right, you know, or to understand each other's struggles. You know, just like I would say, you know, with men, you guys don't have it easy to express your emotions, express your burdens and your hardships, right? Because they teach you since you're a little boy, oh, boys don't cry, boys don't do this. Like, you know what I mean? And that's definitely a struggle. And that's why your statistics for suicide is so high, you know? So it takes someone, a woman to say like, you're right. Nobody hears men, you know?
Yeah, I mean, if the cliche, I mean, it's not even a stereotype, but when a man cries, there are people out there judging him. You know, there are
Yeah.
people, and not only that, but there are also people intimidated to go up to him. You know, like let's just say, hypothetically speaking, I was
Mhm.
crying on a park bench. Many people would be intimidated to go up to me and
Right.
ask, "Are you okay?" You know,
Yeah.
because I'm a man. It could be a whole act. It could be I could be trying
Yeah.
to rob you. You know, it could be a whole thing.
Yeah.
So did you have something to say to that?
No, no, I agree. I
Yeah.
agree. Yeah.
So I want to, you know, I want to talk. There's a whole list of topics that I want to talk about. I know that we're kind of short on time, but so I wanted to go back to the divorce thing because according to research, the number one reason why people get divorced is money. And that's a topic that we haven't really talked about yet because, you know, the cost of living goes up every single year.
Hmm.
And I feel like that, like money affects everything. It affects dating, it affects marriage, you know, the rate at which the childbirth rate is at an all-time low, you know, and I feel like money has a lot like it affects all of that.
Yes. So I think money has to do also with the communication. We are not communicating about these topics
Mhm.
that are important, and money is one of the important topics. You're right. Um, there's no there's no communication about
Uh-huh.
anything important, and money is a very important topic. I remember posting something about, you know, for men, it was like date a woman in your price range, you know? And I got a lot of backlash from that. A lot of men were like, "What?" Like, da, 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 da. And I'm like, but it makes sense. You know what I mean? Even for a woman as well, date in your price range. If you're someone that's looking for X, Y, and Z, why are you dating a man that cannot give that to you? You know what I mean? And as a man, why would you date a woman that requires all these things, you know?
Uh,
You don't have the resources, you know what I mean? And then that gets into you bringing their standards down, or you know what I mean? And then there's arguments, and then again, they get into a marriage, they get divorced because it's like, oh, sh you know, she wants a vacation 5 times a year. I can't even get a one vacation a year. You know what I mean? Or the other way around. Yeah, I can definitely see money being one of the top factors.
Yeah, yeah. I feel like it really, really affects dating nowadays. I wanted
Mm,
to highlight something you said, which is you said something about lowering standards because
mhm,
I noticed a tremendous amount of unrealistic expectations, both men and women
mhm.
in their own way.
Yeah,
So I know some men who like expect the woman to do all the cooking, all the cleaning, to sleep with them whenever. And I also know women who have, very high standards when it comes to 6 feet tall, when it comes to six figures,
yeah,
vacations, blah, blah, blah. So
yeah,
like I feel like a lot of people nowadays have very, very, very unrealistic expectations.
yeah, yeah. Um,
You're
I
allowed to disagree, by the way.
no, 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 I do agree. I do agree. I think people are not moving with the times, right? Like there are some men that are like, "Oh, I want her to stay home and cook and clean and, see after the children." That's
Mm.
a five-figure job.
Yeah.
Right? If you were to delegate these things to a nanny, a maid,
Mhm.
a cleaner, whatever,
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
cook, that's a five-figure,
Yep.
that's a five-figure check right there. You know what I mean? And in this economy, you need two people working. If a man's gonna sit there and say, I want all of these things, he needs to be bringing home at least six figures. And
Yeah.
it's not
Yeah.
to say a woman saying you need to make six figures. It's just the reality of our economy. You need to bring home six figures if the woman is doing X, Y, and Z at home. It's no longer your mom and your dad, or not even your mom and dad, your
Yeah.
grandparents, right? Where you could survive on one income. So men are like in an uproar, like, oh, she wants me to make six figures. Yeah, she does, because if she's doing the manual labor at home, you need to have six figures to upkeep. Upkeep her, the children, the home,
Mhm.
all these different things. Um, and but the same thing with females about the expectations. You know what I mean? Men are trying, you can, some of them pursue certain men and it's like, oh, you're not making six figures. And I I think it's really mind-boggling how they don't understand how much six figures is and how much work it is to attain that.
Yeah, so just a few statistics. It's only about 10% of men that make six figures. Six figures, $100,000 comes out to 273 every single day, 7 days a week. It's
Mhm.
$273, 7 days a week, and that's including Christmas, Thanksgiving, like that's
Yeah,
including like the
yeah,
weekends. So,
yeah,
it's a lot of money. I do think
yeah.
that we live in a society, especially New York, where I feel like, pretty much everyone needs six figures to survive nowadays. It's definitely a goal of mine. I think that it's a very rational goal to aim for six figures. But at the same time, we also have to have realistic expectations.
Mhm.
Um, I do have a question. Are you comfortable talking about your previous marriage or?
Um,
You can say no. It's fine.
No, I don't mind, but the recent event shows that he minds. So
Okay.
I'm
Okay.
just gonna leave it at that, and I'm not gonna talk about it.
Okay. So we don't want to get you in trouble or anything.
I'm never in trouble. Nobody owns me besides Jesus, but I am not, out of respect for
Okay.
him, because I still have respect for
Uh-huh.
him. I just won't talk about it.
But do you have kids?
No.
Oh, so that's good that you at least you didn't
Yeah,
get caught in
no,
that
no,
trap.
no. I do
But
not
you
have.
you look young enough to the point where you can just, you have so much time ahead of you.
I don't want kids, so I'm not really worried about my biological clock.
Yeah. And that's another thing. So, people people now I feel like most people nowadays don't want kids, including myself, by the way. So let's talk about that. Like, why do you think people
Mhm.
nowadays don't really want kids?
I mean, you just said like the economy,
Yeah.
money, right? And then you're also having to find a partner that's willing to be a father or a mother. That's really hard. Like people are, I feel like a lot of people are like, oh, I want kids. Like they want a new shoes or a new bag. And it's like, you don't know what that is. Like the responsibility, the time, the money that you have to put into being a parent. And as a woman, personally, I'm not going to speak for all women, but as a woman, I understand the part about not wanting to have kids, because I'm not trying to be a single mom or a single married mom, right? There's a lot of those. right?
Yeah.
If I have a child, it has to be with someone that wants to be a father, you know? And I need to be someone that wants to be a mother, and I don't. And I've taken that into consideration and saying, I don't want kids because I don't want to be a mother, you know? But I feel like a lot of people are like, oh, well, you need to have children to populate. And I'm like, you are neglecting your own child and you're talking about repopulating the earth. No, you're just creating little children that are going to turn into adults with a lot of trauma because you don't know how to be a parent. But I think the whole like, listen, I could go on and on about that topic, okay? On and on
You're
because
allowed to. Listen, we have like 35 minutes left. You can talk as long as you want.
no, there's just too many parents out there that should not have the title as parent. They should not be mom and dad.
Mm.
And I was talking about this with one of my supervisors, and I was like, just like they give a hard time to people that are adopting, right? They go through the questionnaires, they go through the interviews. We need to have that for people that are conceiving, that are having children, and make sure they're a good fit. It sounds very like, I guess, what's the word? Dystopian.
Communist.
No, I want to say dystopian where it's like, do you deserve to keep this child? But it's the truth. How many kids are we hearing about? They're found in dumpsters, or they killed them, or they're being neglected. You know what I mean? And it's like, some people just do not deserve to have children. And meanwhile, there are others that are actually like fighting, trying to be foster parents, trying to adopt, that want children that could provide all these things for them. So for me, I'm like, I don't know. I'm super bothered by
No,
seeing.
no, I understand. So, in my opinion, most parents don't make very good parents. Um, I think that I think that being psychologically and emotionally intelligent is very, very, very important as a parent.
Mhm,
I don't think I think self-control is another one which ties into psychological intelligence.
mhm.
I think that there are a lot of parents who lack self-control and the psychological and emotional intelligence to raise their child properly. I see a lot of spoiling, a lot of abuse, a lot of neglect, like you said. So I think that self-control and psychological and emotional intelligence, should be like should definitely be a requirement in some sense. But
Mhm.
the questionnaire thing is interesting because like you were serious about like that there should actually be a questionnaire.
Everything you just named should be on the questionnaire because like people are getting into parenthood and it's just like, oh, I need to sit and play with my child. Oh, I need to talk to my child. Oh, I can't just throw an iPad in their face.
Yeah.
No. Yes, you have to sit there, spend time with your child, talk to them, play with them. Like that's a part of raising a decent human being, and that's just basic. It's like, why does somebody need to tell you this? Like then don't have them.
Can I ask how your parents were growing up?
Well, I was raised by a stay-at-home mom.
Uh,
Um, but this was in the 90s.
uh,
So she was a stay-at-home mom. We were in Trinidad. So she
uh.
was a stay-at-home mom.
Oh, you were born in Trinidad.
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah. So it's very common for the woman to take on the role of housewife and stay-at-home mom. So I was raised with my mom being dad. My dad was working. Um, I would say a very loving home, and in Trinidad at that time it was very typical to like hit your kids and all that, like that was normal. But I can remember in my entire childhood being hit like once. I probably deserved it. But I've never gotten hit. It was a very loving home. And because of that, as I got into my adulthood and all the things that I experienced, I felt very free to go to my parents, talk to them, share things. Like I definitely say I have a atypical brown household and upbringing because a lot of brown kids, they don't go to their parents. They're hiding, they're scared. They can't bring anything to their brown parents because they'll like disown you or something like that. But I would say I would grow up in a really loving and open home.
So you had a good childhood.
Yes, yes.
Do you have siblings?
I do. I have an older sister.
How was your relationship with her?
We have an age gap of 8 years,
Oh.
so I don't really re like. I feel like yeah, we played together and stuff in my childhood, but it wasn't like as you would like if it was a smaller age gap, you know what I mean? I definitely got closer to my sister into adulthood, you know? So it was really easy for her to like be a parent to me. You know what I mean? Like she couldn't help it. I tell her that all the time. I'm like, you're mommy and our mom is my sister. But no, as we got into adulthood, we definitely got closer
So
because it was
everyone's in New York right now, or
yes. Hmm.
how is your relationship with your parents today?
Super close. I mean, my sister would say too close because I'm always talking to them about my dating life. I'm like, so this happened, this
Oh,
happened.
you talk to your parents about your dating life?
Oh yeah.
Oh, really? That's really close.
Yes. And they're just they're like, okay.
Yeah, because that's, like I never talk to my parents about my dating life. And, like we're close. I love them,
Yeah.
but I don't want to worry them. Like because there was this one time when I did tell them about this woman I was going on a date with, and they got
Right.
a little bit worried. She was a single mom, and they got a little bit worried about that whole situation. So it
Okay.
sounds you sound like you have really good parents.
I do. I do. I think they're the best parents ever. Um, I think, of course they worry when, certain things, but I feel like that gives room for closeness and growth within the relationship, right? Because nothing should stay stagnant. And I think that's room for your parent to understand, like, I'm grown and I can handle this. This is okay with me. I think it helps them understand you better as an adult, you know? And it's kind of transitioning from that whole like parent child, like you'll always be parent child, but more like parent adult, right? You're no longer a child, you're an adult. So yeah, I think I like the idea of like sharing things with your parents because it's like now you're in the stage of being friends, right? So it's like, okay, well, I'm sharing with my friend, like this is what's going on, stuff like that. So
It's really cool for the young people listening. It's really cool because, when you're a kid, your parents are figures of authority, and then once you turn like 18, 19, 20, you become friends. And
yeah,
it's a really cool transition when you're just friends, and
yeah,
now that they're technically my best friends, they
right.
help me out more than anybody, and emotionally, and sometimes the financially even, so it's a really cool transition.
Yeah.
I wanted to go back to the childbirth rate because I did have something to say about that. So money is definitely one reason why,
Hmm.
maybe the number one reason why. And this is happening worldwide. Like
Yeah.
I heard even in Asia, they're not wanting to have kids. And I heard, I forget which country it was, but they're giving financial incentives. They're giving out money to
Yes.
people who want kids. And I think that money is one reason, maybe the number one reason. I'm also noticing a lot of like, I don't know if selfishness is the right word, but a lot of like, I would rather go on vacations and I would rather retire early. And maybe selfishness is the right word, but do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah. Um, no, I do understand that, but because I once upon a time used to call it like, oh, maybe I'm being selfish and I'm not having children, but I don't think it's selfish.
Hmm.
It's not selfish to choose yourself. It's not selfish to especially before you have kids, right? I feel like it changes when you do have kids. And I'm not saying not to prioritize yourself, but it's selfish if you begin choosing yourself way more than you're choosing your children, right?
Of
Because
course,
if you're a
yeah.
parent, you kind of give up certain things, right? For a certain time with your child. So it's like I don't call it selfish. I think we are aware that if we have children, it's not going to be as easy to travel. It's not going to be as financially um uh set us how do I say it? Um
Easy.
yeah, I guess financially easy to travel, right? It's more money with the kids and blah 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 and all those things. But we are we are decided and we're aware of what it takes and we decided, okay, I am not going to do that. So what I don't think that's selfish. You know what I mean? I,
Yeah.
I wouldn't define that as selfish. It's not. You're being aware and you're choosing the option that you would prefer.
Yeah, it's interesting because I have friends who pressure me to have kids, and then one of them said, who's going to take care of you when you get older? And
This question.
when you really think about it, though, having kids to take care of you when you get older, that's actually really selfish when you think about it.
That's not a reason to have a child. Like,
Right.
that's insane. And that's even questionable. How do you know that? Like how? You know what I mean? There's so many things to get you to that place. You know, what if your child doesn't have the funds? What if your child doesn't make it to the end of your life? You know what I mean? Like what if you don't have a good relationship there with your child? It's to me it's like that's your reason for having children. Maybe just work a little harder and
Right.
maybe your money can fund your retirement because that's not a good reason to bring a whole human being onto Earth.
Yeah, I mean it's one reason, but it shouldn't be the only reason I would say. And
Right.
I think by the time that we're 80, 90, I think robots will just be taking care of us and changing our diapers and who
I,
knows? Um
I don't, yeah. And then
I,
people talk about legacy, and I'm like, what legacy? Like, to me, it's like, no, come on.
hmm.
Like, what legacy? What are we talking about? I'm sorry, but the world's coming to an end pretty soon. What legacy are you talking about?
I'm noticing some pessimism.
In me?
Like the world is coming to an end. What
But it's
legacy?
true. It's
What do you
true.
mean by that? What do you
I
mean?
mean, look, to me, look at the political climate that we're in. Look at the statistics that you're seeing all over the world.
Global
And
warming.
to me, this is just the beginning of the end. Like I mentioned before, I am a Christian. So it's written right there in the word what's the end looking like, right? So it's like I know this is the beginning of the end, and that's also another reason for me with not having children because I don't want to bring a child onto this earth. You know, I feel like right now we're being pushed into this political climate where women's rights are being taken away. What is it going to look like for my child when she turns 18? Or God forbid something happens to her before she's 18. You know what I mean? Like I, yeah, I would say pessimistic, yeah, but I also feel like it's realistic.
Yeah, I mean, in many ways we are. Global warming is one way to think about it. Another thing is like I said, back to the money thing. Because there are literally people who I forget what the exact numbers is, but like for every 1% that the unemployment go down,
Hmm.
thousands of people starve to death. I forget what the exact numbers is, but so again, like money it affects everything. It affects the marriage and kids. It affects
Hmm.
everything.
Yeah.
I wanted to tell a quick story. So I used to have a psychology teacher years ago who
Hmm.
said something very, very wise. He
Hmm.
was talking about kids, and he said, a lot of people have kids to be loved, and that's a really, really bad reason to have kids. Not only because it's selfish, but also because, you have to discipline your kids, and when you discipline them, they ain't loving you, you
Hmm.
know? So I think that was a really that always stuck with me. Not that I have kids, but it was just a really, really wise statement. I think a lot of people have kids to be loved, and I do agree with him that that's a
Yeah.
bad reason to have kids. What do you think?
I agree. To me, that's having kids to fill a void,
Yeah.
and that's not fair because you're putting so much expectations onto this child, and that's not fair. You know, you have parents calling their kids, oh, the love of my life. No, that's not the love of your life. That is the child that's going to be raised to find his or her love of their life. You know what I mean? Your child is not your spouse. Your child is not
Your friend.
your what?
Your friend.
Your friend, right? Your child is not your friend. Your child is not your retirement plan. Like,
Definitely not.
right, that's not what children are for. It's like you have to really be a whole human being and then decide I want to have a child so that I can give them the best, right? I can love them. I can take care of them. I can raise them into decent human beings and people aren't seeing it like that. It's like, no, I'm gonna bring them here so they can love me. They can love me unconditionally. They can take care of me. It's all me, 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 me,
Yeah.
me. And
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
not the reality of being a parent. It's about them.
So what do you think is a good, legitimate reason to have a child?
Silence.
You're anti-kids. You're anti having kids.
Crickets. Um, no, like I have
You're
this.
allowed to say none. You're allowed to say that.
Oh, I mean, okay, so there's this little girl now that's in my life, and I can't imagine my life without her. Um, but oh, okay, I think to have a reason for having kids, it just has to be the stance of being about them. Like I just said, you want to love them, you want to raise them, you want to give them the best life so that they can be, that can add to the earth, right? To the population, to become a functioning human being that's doing something on earth for people, right? And I feel like that's a good reason. But people aren't having kids for those reasons. So they're just wasting the child that they're given. They're not turning them into decent human beings. They're turning them into kids with trauma because you had kids for the wrong reason.
So what I'm hearing is that a good reason to have kids is for selfless, altruistic reasons as opposed to selfish reasons.
Yeah.
Yeah. I agree. And I think a lot of it, because this is a really important topic, and I would like to talk about it a little bit more,
Mhm.
the having kids, because I'm noticing a lot of people nowadays have the mentality of life is suffering. Life is suffering, and I don't want kids because why would I want them to suffer? And that's actually one huge reason why I don't want kids because,
Yeah.
I do view life as suffering, and that, it's actually a very nihilistic viewpoint. And I want to talk about this topic because I'm noticing a lot of nihilism in the world today, a lot of feeling like, life is suffering, maybe even life is meaningless.
Yeah.
And I wanted to talk about that topic. So what is your understanding of nihilism?
I I mean, you said, okay, so I understand that life is suffering. I mean, there's a lot going on, right? And
Uh-huh.
even if we're going back to money, even if you're in a certain tax bracket, life could still be suffering, right?
Yeah,
You could be
yeah.
lacking in other areas. It's like, great, I have all this money, but I don't have anyone to share it with, blah, blah, blah. But I wouldn't say life is meaningless. I think life has a lot of meaning, but we are caught up in surviving that it almost feels like life is meaningless sometimes. I don't think so, but I understand like what you're saying about it feeling, but it feeling meaningless. How do
What
you how do you define it? Like when you say life is meaningless, can you tell me like a little bit more?
Yeah, so you brought up a good point, which is that there's a huge difference between life is suffering and life is meaningless. There's a huge
Yeah.
difference.
Yeah.
Um, I know people, I personally know people who have the mentality of like, we're all gonna die anyway, so what's the point? And obviously, I'm not saying I agree with it.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, I'm noticing a lot of it today. A lot of people have that mentality of like, what's the point? Like, I'm just living check to check.
Yeah.
Like, all I do is work home, work home, work home. Like, a lot of people nowadays have the mentality of like, well, what's the point? Like, there's so much suffering.
Yeah.
Why would I have kids if life is so much suffering?
Yeah.
Um, and this to me is a very important topic because that mentality often leads to suicide, which you mentioned before.
Hmm.
So what do you think gives life meaning? What gives life meaning?
Oh, sorry. Um, I mean, I could answer that. I want to answer that from my Christian point of view,
Sure,
right?
sure, sure.
Because we're all placed on this earth and our purpose is to help one another, and ultimately build the kingdom of God. So that would be my answer, but
Mhm.
that's my answer as a Christian, right? Like when you, I'm still remembering you calling me a pessimist, but it's
Did that hurt your feelings?
no, it didn't. I just think it's funny because what you just said, that is pessimist, but I don't think it's pessimism. I think it's just being realistic.
Hmm.
We're being realistic. Look at the odds that we're dealing with now, with the economy, politics, all these different things going on. Um, but yeah, so my response is I don't think life is, no, I'm sorry. You asked me something else about what I think the meaning of life is.
What gives life meaning?
Yes. And so I think it's us utilizing the things that we were put on this earth with for others. Does that make sense?
So what gives life meaning is helping others. That's what I hear.
Yeah, uplifting others, and ultimately you're doing that for yourself, right? And again, going back to me being a Christian, I would say building the kingdom of God.
Mhm.
And, like that's our. It's like whatever we're doing here, we're building up our treasures in heaven. So that's what comes to mind to answer that question, you
Yeah,
know?
I've been thinking about this a lot lately. Basically, like the mentality of religious people versus the mentality of atheists. Um, Obviously, or at least in my opinion, there's no scientific evidence. You can't prove that God exists. But what I will say is that I think that people who believe in God often tend to be happier and more at peace because now there is more meaning. Now the universe is not such a random place, right? A lot of atheists view the universe as like this random place where things are just moving around and with no meaning, whereas a religious person
Mhm.
might view it as, we're going to heaven, we have a God to worship, there is an objective morality of right and wrong. And I
Mhm.
think that for that reason, a lot of the times religious people tend to be happier.
Yeah, that could be a part of it as well.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, I don't know how to convince people, that life has meaning. So I'll give you an example, okay? I have a friend who's a welder.
Mhm.
Really, really, really difficult job, blending money, like he probably even harder than a construction worker. He
Mhm.
works like 60 to 65 hours a week, four kids, addicted gambler. He would kill me if he saw this, so I have to make sure he doesn't see this. But like, like he just, his father passed away. Really, really, really difficult life. So, what do you say to those people? What do you say to people who just have really, really difficult lives? What do you say to them?
I mean, that's a process, right? It's not going to be a one and done conversation. It's a process, right? And I think that's just starting with deciphering their life. You've mentioned four kids. I don't know if there's a spouse involved. While there is dire circumstances in his situation, based on what you said, there's also other things in your life,
Mhm.
right? So, and again, not going back to like not putting your happiness onto your children, but there is some form of happiness, right? It's like, how are you interacting with your children? Are you guys going on trips? How is your relationship with them, because some people can have all these dire consequences, but then when they come into their home, it's like, well, I have a good spouse, right? I have a spouse that listens. I have a spouse that I can get love, support, and all these things from, and also children. So that would be like, to me, would be like a deep dive into where his happiness comes from, right? It's like, you're not going to tell me your happiness comes from gambling. It's not, right? That's a temporary satisfaction. But it would be, to me, that would be a process of trying to like really dig into where is your happiness? When are you really truly happy and it's not contingent on a win from gambling or a paycheck or something, you know what I mean? Something like that. So for me, it would be it's pulling from something called solution focused brief therapy, and it's called exceptions, and it's really asking them like, when in your life are you truly happy? Like, when you not feeling like, oh, I'm happy because I just won in gambling. I'm happy because I just got a paycheck or something like that. It would be like, when are you like truly happy? When you feel that true happiness? Because it's always there. It's just a matter of finding it, you know?
Right. I really yeah, so my favorite part of that when you said it's not a one and done conversation. I think that that's really, really good advice because, when you're dealing with someone really, really difficult life, one conversation won't make the problems go away, right? Like you have to
Yeah,
keep talking to them, you have to validate their feelings.
yeah.
And this kind of brings me to the topic of toxic positivity. Um,
Okay.
do you know about that topic?
I mean, I think I know what you're talking about, but I haven't really like
Yeah,
detailed.
so like let's just say that he was complaining to me about his life and I said, "You should be grateful. You make a lot of money. you have four healthy kids. You should be grateful. Like it's basically like when you're positive, when you're so positive that you're not validating their feelings. You
Right.
know, like you should be grateful. You have a
Yeah.
great life, as opposed to I'm sorry to hear that. I'm sorry
Yeah.
that you're going through that,
Yeah.
you know?
To me, that feels like a shut up, where
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
like, you have this, you have that. I don't want to hear it, you know? So I think, I don't know, as a therapist, you definitely shouldn't be doing that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, as I guess friends do that. That is true. That is true. You know, people think like, oh, well, you know, maybe like, oh, you make six figures, you have nothing to worry about. Well, that's not true, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. And a lot of people do that, and even like I'm just gonna say it, and this might be a little controversial, but even like billionaires, right? Like, yeah, they are billionaires. Yeah, they might be greedy capitalists, but they go through shit too. They
Yeah,
they go through struggles too. They suffer too. That that their loved ones die, and I'm not saying that they're not greedy capitalists, but I'm just
right.
saying that everyone has their own struggles, like you
Yeah,
said. And I also noticed that a lot of people have great external lives, but not great internal lives. So, for example, like let's just say someone made six figures, even was a millionaire, had healthy kids, had a great partner, but had BPD, borderline personality
yeah,
disorder.
yeah,
And a lot of people like are really bad on understanding, like
yeah.
just because they have a great external life,
Mhm.
they could have a horrible internal life.
Yeah.
Um,
I
uh,
see it
so
all
I,
the time. Like, you never know what's going on inside someone's home
yeah,
and their head. You
yep,
never know. You know, especially with the age of social media, when everything is like, oh, everything looks great. You know, they're
yep.
doing this, they're
Uh-huh.
doing that. You never know. You know, because like again, going back to suicide, when you have people like living these great lives, and then, well, you think they're living these great lives, and then you hear, oh, they killed themselves. What do you mean? And I was like, what do you mean? What do you mean? Like, you don't know. You don't know what's going on in their homes, in their minds. You know, people could be at their height of success or happiness, whatever, but you do not know what they're dealing with internally, or with family, spouses. You know what I mean?
Right. You have no idea what their thought process is like, what their childhood was like.
Yeah.
We could talk all day about how childhood affects your self-esteem and sometimes for life. And you never know what someone's going through. And it's pretty safe to assume that they're going through something because
Yeah.
everyone's going through something. So
Yeah.
we have 7 minutes left. I did want to talk about confidence. Um, I don't even know where to start because there's so much to say about confidence. Would you consider yourself a confident person?
Yes.
And how did you get there? How did because most people, I feel like a lot of people today have a lot of struggle with
Mhm.
confidence and self-esteem. So how did you get there?
I think personally, I think a lot of people are struggling with confidence and self-esteem because we're in that age of comparison, right? There's always something to
Mhm.
compare, and
Yeah,
we're also in the age
yeah.
of very unrealistic beauty standards. I think that's what it comes with. And I mean that for men and women, right? We have, oh, you're a man, you should have a six pack, you should, be 6 feet, you should. It's like, really? Well, I was born the way I was. I mean,
Yep.
the six pack maybe you could control, right? You got to work on it. But
Mhm.
still, like, a lot of these things are fake, right? You have unrealistic beauty standards. You also have unrealistic, like I said before, unrealistic financial positions, right? Like, everybody can say, oh, I want this, I want to make six figures, or I want a spouse that makes six figures. Let's really break that down. How are we getting there? How are they making that? It's not as easy as saying, oh, I want a job with six figures, and you just go apply for it and you get it. No, it's
Yep.
not that simple. um so I would say the whole issue with confidence and self-esteem comes from the comparing with others, and again, you do not know what other people are going through. I when I was in real estate, we post all of our wins on real estate. We
Yep.
post
Yep.
all the sold, and people
Yep.
don't understand. We worked what, a year for that one paycheck.
Yep. Yep.
All the,
Yep.
the crying, the pushing, the dealing with all the nonsense that we do, and people are like, "Oh, she just made a five-figure check," and I'm like, "Yeah, because I haven't gotten paid in a year." And I made five figures. That's one paycheck. That's your paycheck that you make weekly. I just got it once. You know what I mean? And I don't think people understand that. They just see the good and they're like, I'm jealous. Oh, I wish that was me. Oh, why wasn't that me? And it's like, no, you really have to sit and think about people's lives.
Yeah,
You
so I failed the real estate exam 3 times before I passed. I'm not gonna lie. And it's so easy to see someone close and get jealous. They don't see all the flakes, all the
know?
buyers, all the people who block us, the people who stop answering us,
Yeah,
the cold calling, the door
yeah,
knocking, the EDDM. They don't see all of that.
yeah. The time
Um,
we invest on clients that don't end up closing.
And then we got to give like 30% of our check. I mean, I have a great broker. My broker, I only give him 750 flat, a whole different story.
Okay.
But yeah, they
Yeah,
don't see all the BS we have to
yeah.
go through. I wanted to talk about the comparing because
Hmm.
I think that's a really, really, really good answer. I think
Yeah.
that we compare at a not only at a conscious level, but even at a subconscious level,
Mhm.
there's a tremendous amount of comparison. Like if you if you are in the top 1% financially, even if you had the same exact salary, right? Like let's just say that, you know, I was in the top 1% financially, but my salary was exactly the same. Like it would actually make us more confident because we have this like to a certain extent we have I think somewhat of a superiority complex like we like to feel at least equal or above other people. Like
Mhm.
so another example is like an iPhone. Like I think about this sometimes. Like what if what if only 1% of people in the world can afford an iPhone, which might be the case when you take like all the other countries,
Mhm.
developing countries into consideration. Like I feel like a lot of people like they don't really feel like they don't really appreciate what they have because of the fact that everyone has it. I think comparison is really, really, really unhealthy.
Yeah.
So we have 3 minutes left. Is there anything else you wanted to add or ask or comment?
No, I mean, to answer your question, like I think confidence also comes from what you prioritize.
Mm.
You know?
Mm.
And I think that's it right there. And for me, my confidence, well, first, my confidence is in Jesus, that everything's always going to work out, even if it looks real dim. But I think it's in what you prioritize. So for me, I love living like my soft life and I know that I'm happy, right? Like there are things that I want for my life. I'm not there yet, but that doesn't mean I'm gonna sit here and be unhappy and let it affect my confidence, right? So it's like, okay, I have a loving family, a family that supports me no matter what. I am happy. You know what I mean? To me, that's being rich in life because a lot of people don't have that. And a lot of people have issues because they don't have that. For me, I love that I have that. You know what I mean? So it's like, that's my confidence. I know I can always go to my family for anything, So I would say that. I would say it's in what you prioritize, right? Because, like if you're prioritizing money, you're gonna say, "Oh, I want to have that person's 6, 7 figures." Oh, if only I had that, I'd be more confident. It's like, well, no, be confident in what you have.
Yeah.
You're going to work every day. You have a job.
Yep, and there's this concept called moving the goalpost, which is
Yeah,
basically about, we always want more. Like the guy who's making 50K wants 100K. The guy who's
correct.
making 100K wants 200K.
Yeah,
When you reach that, you want 300K. Like we
right.
just have this very, very unhealthy tendency to just
Yeah,
move the goalpost and want more and want more.
yeah,
Like I was a school safety officer for 10 years. Now I'm a realtor. Now I want more. Now I want to
yeah,
be a therapist. When I'm a therapist, I want to own my own clinic. When I
right,
own my own clinic, I want to be a millionaire. So it's like we have this very unhealthy
right.
tendency.
But I mean, besides unhealthy, yes, I think how you approach it, right? But I think that's just ambition, you
Mhm.
know, for always wanting more. And I think that's fine because again, you never want to be stagnant, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And but I think it's how you approach it. If you're like, oh, I'm not happy until I get that, and then you get that and you're like, I'm still not happy, then it's like, well, listen, you're always going to be chasing and you're always going to be unhappy. You have to be happy with where you are. Because, and I always say this, and again, it might be pessimistic, but like tomorrow is not promised,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So if you're sitting here talking about, oh, I'll be happy tomorrow, I'll be happy tomorrow, until you're never happy and you're dead.
Yeah, I think
When are you happy? When are you going to be
yeah.
happy? not today with what you have.
You have to enjoy the ride. You have to,
Yes.
there's this song and it's called "In the Waiting" by Kina
Mm,
Grannis, and
mm,
one of the lines is "Life is in the waiting." We have
mm.
to be happy with the ride and the journey. And I know it's 10 times easier said than done. It is even for me, like it is hard to enjoy the journey sometimes. It
Yeah.
is hard to appreciate the little things sometimes, but it's that's what it really comes down to. I know
Yeah.
we're out of time, Amelia. It was really, really great talking to you.
Yes, thank you.
We'll have a part two in like a year or something.
Okay, sounds good.
All right, Amelia. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.